coming.
Winning. Everybody likes to win, right? Anybody like to lose? Probably not. Problem is, in life, there is, in a game, there's always a winner and a loser. So we probably all experience both. We enjoy winning more, but we have to experience losing as well. What I'm going to focus on tonight is youth sports. So specifically 12 and under. And my point is that I think too many coaches put too much emphasis on winning as opposed to just learning how to play the game, learning how to be good teammates. Now, in most youth sports, there's two types of leagues. There's what you would call a competition league. A competition league, typically, they're more serious about it. Parents are paying money. The coaches are paid to do what they do. They're traveling, probably to tournaments. So there's travel expenses. And they probably think their children, maybe they'll get a scholarship playing soccer in college or something like that. So they're willing to put some investment in that. The other type of league is recreational. So recreational, they're not as serious. It doesn't mean there's not good athletes in recreational sports. There are. But that just means their parents or the players aren't that serious about one particular sport. They're not willing to invest as much time and money in that one particular sport. So they're there probably just to have fun and learn how to play the game. Okay? So there's definitely a distinction between the two, and I don't have any problem with, particularly in competition, with coaches focusing some on winning and teaching the kids that that's the goal is to win. My issue is with the recreational players, and I specify 12 and under because at some point you need to understand what winning is all about. When you're younger, you just need to learn to play the game, have fun, and figure out what you're doing out there. I'm going to give you a specific example of what I consider too much focusing on winning. So about 30 years ago, when my oldest son was 8 years old, we signed him up to play basketball. My son had never played basketball before. Now, he played some soccer. Honestly, he wasn't very good at soccer, which is why we chose to try a different sport. In soccer, he kind of ran away from the ball instead of towards the ball. It just wasn't his thing. So we thought, well, okay, maybe basketball. We'll try that. So we signed him up for a basketball league, and back then, I don't know if they still do it now, but they had a draft. Now, if you're familiar with pro sports, you know there's a draft, and when you come out of college, you know you get to this. That people decide whether you're the number one draft or the 50th in the draft or whatever, and it has something to do with money at some point. In youth sports, the idea for the draft is to make things fair. So they scheduled a Saturday, and they said, everybody show up on a Saturday. The coaches, and I volunteered to coach my son's team, by the way. Coaches and the players show up on Saturday, and what happens is the coaches each get a clipboard with every name and number of the players that are practicing that day, and all the players get a name tag. So we get to watch them shoot baskets and dribble and rebound and do their thing out there. As we're doing this, we're evaluating them. We're going to decide, okay, that boy there looks like the best player out here on the court. He's number one, number two, and so forth. So we rank all these players. Now, the kids don't see the rankings, okay? We don't want them to see them. Afterwards, we go into a room in the gymnasium, and probably a random drawing that says, okay, this team gets the first draft pick, this team gets the second, and so forth. So as people choose their players, you scratch them off the list, and you choose your players. Pretty soon you have rosters for all the teams. So one of the things I need to tell you about is if you're coaching your child, you automatically get your child on your team. You don't have to draft your child. Now, if you have a good player, okay, on your team, if your child is a great athlete or a great basketball player, you have a little bit of advantage. Now remember, I told you my son's not that good. So I didn't have that advantage. However, we get to the first practice, and I noticed right away that I've got a couple boys that are really, really good. One little boy named Paunch. Kid can run like the wind. He's short, but he can shoot, he can dribble, he's fast. Got another little boy named Michael. A little taller, he can rebound and do all those other things. Everybody else, not so much. Average to below average. So these are my two best players. Now, a lot of teams might have 3 good players because, again, their child might be a really good player, which happens a lot. So we go along the season, and a typical roster for me, lineup, is I'll start the game out with Paunch and Michael in the game first because I don't want to get too far behind when the game starts. So we're competitive. Usually in the second quarter, I pull one out, substitute the other boys, leave one of them in so we don't get too far behind. Third quarter, rotate those 2, rotate the other 3 boys. By the fourth quarter, we're usually down a bit because, again, we don't have 3 good players, we just have 2 good players. And here's what I do in the fourth quarter, though. I don't play either one of them. I put all those other 5 boys out there that don't get to touch the ball that much. Now, why do you think I do that? Anybody take a guess?
So they could participate
Exactly.
and feel as part of the team.
With Paunch and Michael in the game, those other boys don't get to touch the ball that much. And my whole thing as a coach, especially when they're young, is they all deserve a chance to play and touch the ball and compete and participate. Now, if I was like some coaches, I would be playing Paunch and Michael all the time. I'm only required to play each player 2 quarters. Okay, they don't have to play the whole game. So I could play them more often and we'd win more games. We were in second to last place at the end of the season. And then they called a coaches meeting the week before the last game. Coaches meeting was just general administrative things until towards the end of the meeting, one of the coaches that was in second place, there was one team that was undefeated, the Lakers were undefeated. Okay, they hadn't beat anybody. The team that was in second place, they had lost 1 game, probably to the Lakers. And so he says, what happens if the Lakers lose this Saturday and we win? They have the same record, right? So the coach for the Lakers, she looks around the room and she looks over at me. She says, well, we play the Knicks this Saturday, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, you can imagine what I'm thinking, right? But all I said was, we'll just have to see. I'll see you on Saturday. The room was silent, by the way, before I said anything. Nobody knew what to say. You heard a pin drop. So Saturday comes along, and we start the game with Paunch and Michael. First quarter, it's a close game. We might be down a few points because they're playing all the good players. Second quarter, I pull one out, put one back in, just like I always do. Third quarter, same thing. Fourth quarter's different. Okay, we're down by about probably 5 or 10 points going to fourth quarter. I put Paunch and Michael in there together. These 2 together are like Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, okay? Those boys stole the ball, they rebounded the ball, they ran up and down the court. They scored about 35 to 40 points in that quarter, and we ended up winning about like 25 points. That's good enough, right? I mean, that's fun, but that's not really the point of the story. Here's what happened next. You know, at the end of the game, you go out and you line up and you shake hands with the other team. So we go out and line up. The team's over there on their bench. I'm like, all right, give them a minute to kind of settle themselves. And wait a minute. They don't come over. And finally I look over there and I hear they're crying. All these kids are crying. Every single one of them are crying. And I think the coach had tears in her eyes too. So finally I tell my boys, you know what? I said, let's just let them, deal with what they're dealing with. Let's celebrate our victory. So we got our snacks, which is the most fun thing for kids after a game is to get their snacks, okay? And we celebrate our victory. Now, my whole point of this is that this coach could have used this as a life lesson for these children, okay? What she could have done is taught these kids how to lose gracefully. Because like I said, there's always going to be a winner and a loser. They had not experienced losing yet. and they probably weren't expecting to lose. They were unprepared for it. And that is really my whole point, is I've seen this happen over and over in sports. I've coached soccer for the last 10 years. I've been an administrator on the soccer club, and I think that there's just too much focus on winning in youth sports. Thank you. That's I'm sorry. Thank you, Juan.
First speaker tonight is Emerson John. He's doing CC Project 1 Icebreaker. Tyler, thank you. 2 years as a member and still growing. Please welcome Emerson John.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests. It was 1998. I was a primary school teacher working in St. Vincent. I've been working as a teacher for 3 years and just earning enough money to be independent. After 3 years, I felt like it was time to move on, find something else to advance myself. I didn't know what that would have been. But all I knew is that I wanted to advance myself. And luckily, one night while I was watching television, during the news break, it was advertised that the government would be offering scholarships to Cuba. And the person that was leading that scholarship program actually was an individual at the church that my old man and I attended. So, knowing that I wanted to advance myself academically, and having heard this and knowing that there's a contact right there in the church, I approached my dad, told him what I want to do, and the following Sunday, we were able to meet with that individual and we spoke, and I was asked to submit an application and come into the office the following week. That I did. And on the 4th of September of '98, myself and another young lady, we were on our way to Cuba. We landed in Cuba during the night, so we weren't able to see much. But from what we saw at the airport, it seemed like it was any other country. However, in the morning, when we awoke, it was a different impression of the place. The vehicles, as you would have seen on television, were like 50 years behind. The buildings were dilapidated, and we wondered, wow, what are we getting ourselves into? Before we left for Cuba, we would have heard that as repayment for these scholarships, we would be asked to work on the farms. However, after a few months being there, that was far from the truth. We were not asked to do any work whatsoever. However, every so often there would be what is called trabajo voluntario, which is voluntary work, and you would assist in cleaning or doing some sort of work, because as you know, Cuba is a socialist government, and most persons work for the state. The bottom line is not what drives that country. Now, I left Cuba 6 years later in 2004 with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and the ability to speak Spanish, albeit about 75%. Now, I said all that to say this, that 2 weekends ago, we all knew that Fidel Castro passed away. And on the television, we saw a number of persons, primarily in Miami, celebrating, and I'm sure many different parts of the world, there were persons celebrating also for various reasons. But at the same time, myself and thousands of persons who would have gone to Cuba and received a degree in that place, we felt a sense of loss, because say what you may about Fidel Castro, the system that he implemented and had in place for 5 decades left his people in a state of, I would say poverty, yes. The majority of persons in Cuba are poor. However, the system allows them to earn a free education, it's a free health system. Primarily, they don't have to pay for anything. Can the system be improved? Certainly. But myself and the thousands of persons from the Caribbean, Latin America, and places in Africa, we are grateful for the opportunity that this man, Fidel Castro, provided for us. Now, his ideology is, he fought against capitalism, as you all know. And whenever we think of capitalism at the time, we would think about the two sets of words that primarily come to mind, the haves and the have-nots. Because capitalism, as you know, is a system that's driven by the bottom line. Persons who have would continue to have, and those who don't have would struggle. And therefore, his ideology was to set something in place to ensure that the have-nots are able to take care of themselves. And like I said, for 5 decades, he did that, and he was not entirely successful, and he alone cannot be blamed for that. As we all know, there was an embargo in place that prevented a lot of trade between Cuba and other nations. Now, I want to point out 4 things other than the scholarships, or 3 things other than the scholarships that he provided for the Caribbean region. And these are things that you may all know, the majority of the world would not know. They see this guy as an enemy for the most part. But he would have done quite a bit of good to assist other third world nations. Like, for example, on the island of Grenada, through technical support from his engineers, they were able to build an international airport. Just recently, in my island, St. Vincent, we are about to complete an international airport also with tremendous assistance from the Cuban government and its people. Without that airport, each time I travel, I have to overnight in 2 or 3 different places before getting home. With the international airport completed, I can likely travel from New York directly home, or from Dallas directly home, depending on the time of the year. Throughout Latin America and the Caribbean also, there's a program called Vision Now, where persons are able to get eye surgeries, things that they would not be able to afford, were it not for assistance from the medical personnel from Cuba who move throughout the Caribbean within this program. Vision Now completes a number of fairly basic surgeries, so that persons without the means are able to see. And finally, whenever there's a natural disaster in the world, one of the first set of medical persons to be on the scene would be medical persons from Cuba. And those are the things that a number of persons are not aware of. And they see the system and the leadership in Cuba as primarily enemy, and for good reasons possibly. But I must say that that government has done quite a bit for the Caribbean, Latin America, and African countries. And for that, I want to say thank you, Fidel, and thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
We had 3 great speeches. Now it's time to have some fun. Let me introduce the topic master, Rob Perkins.
Tonight's topic for table topic is about restaurants. The reason being is, last week I went to the Outback restaurant. I've always wanted to go to the Outback restaurant for 30 years, but I never went because of the long lines. And I went there because of the long lines, and so we went for a birthday meal, and I'd ordered, for the first time, I ordered a steak from Outback, and unfortunately, it was a very disappointing meal. So they gave me the idea for the topics for today, which is about restaurants. My first question is an easy one, and I'll ask, let's see, Jim, Tommy, what is the strangest themed restaurant that you've heard of or went to?
Mr. Topic Master, fellow Toastmaster, and guests, the question is, what is the strangest restaurant that I've ever been to?
Yes.
None. I have not been to any strange restaurant. I don't even like food. If you give me a choice, I'd rather drink fluid and everything. When I was very young, I went without eating for 14 days. I weigh under 100 pounds when I came to the United States. I now weigh about 165. Why do I need to eat? I prepare the food, go to the store, do all the trouble, cook, smell the food, eat the food, brush my teeth, then the next day I go to the bathroom and I cannot even do anything. So what can a strange restaurant be for me, Mr. Toastmaster? I've seen it all at home. When I get to the restaurant, I'm going to get the same. So I don't have one. If there is one, I'm not going to stop by there. Mr. Topic Master.
I'd like to ask some of our guests if they'd like to participate. Would you like to participate in questions?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the next question I'd like to ask is, what is the fanciest restaurant that you've eaten at, and what did you order?
Thank you, Mr. Topic Master, Toastmaster, and guests. The question is, what is the fanciest restaurant that I've eaten at, and what did I eat?
Yes.
Okay. The fanciest restaurant that I have eaten at would be one while I was visiting family in New York. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but what I ate, it was steak and potatoes, and it was a German-themed restaurant, but it was very nice inside, and I just enjoyed the atmosphere more than anything. And that the quality of food, it doesn't stick out to me, but being with my family was the most memorable moment of that experience.
Thank you. Gregory, would you like to participate?
Sure.
Okay. I love to go to restaurants, the hole-in-the-wall restaurants, where it's really great food. They're usually out of the way. And so my next question is, would you eat at a restaurant that's really dirty if the food was amazing?
Well, Club, I wouldn't say that the restaurant was really dirty, but it was kind of simple. And I was born and raised in a place called Aiken, South Carolina. It's about 12 miles east of Augusta, Georgia. Okay, and it was a fish market. You know, it's so close to the ocean that they get fresh fish. And it was two brothers, Nicky and Pete Gallows. Their mother owned, it was called Charlie's Fish Market. And you walked in, and they had these old Coca-Cola coolers, like from the '60s, with ice in it, and this fish just laying up there, you know, with their eyes just staring at you. And you pick the fish that you want, and it was these guys that kind of hung around in the neighborhood. They were alcoholics. That's where they worked. They were scaling these fish, and his fish scales would be all over them. And she chops it up and fries in this big giant iron skillet, and it smells so good. And she had her own recipe mustard sauce, a hot sauce, and she had this loaf of bread. She just slapped the bread on there and slapped this fish on it, and rolled it up in newspaper, and it was the best fish you ever want to eat. And but it was humble, you know, wooden chairs, and I think she might have had an old picture of her from the '60s up on the wall when she was a young woman. But eventually, Pete and Nikki, we were in the same grade, but I don't know what happened. I think Nikki was older, but for some reason he was in the same grade. They both died. But she remembered me from a little boy coming in there, and she cries every time I come in there. She's an older lady now, she's probably in her 80s. And she remember me as her son's classmates. And that's my story.
Wow, that's a great story. Reminds me of a place in Dallas where it's called Top Cat, where they have the best fried catfish you could ever get. There's a takeout place. As a companion question, what restaurant do you eat at the most? That's a pretty simple question. I'd like to ask Jenna.
What restaurant do I eat out at the most?
Yes.
I don't eat out very often. I cook my food, obviously. Okay. I'm trying to think of a restaurant I go out to with my family when I'm up in Pennsylvania, but I can't remember the name of it. Fairly new. It's I really can't remember the name of it. It has elephant in the name somewhere. Yeah, elephant or a Thai elephant maybe. It's a Thai food place. I like that place, but sorry I can't remember the name.
Well, that's all I've got. So I guess the next one is the general evaluator. Call for reports. Sean?
Good evening, everybody. The next part of the meeting, I'm going to call for the evaluation. And I'll start off with Ms. Jana Rock. She was evaluating Ms. Audrey.
Doris.
Doris, I'm sorry.
I think Doris did well on her speech. I thought the speech topic was geared to all audience members. Everybody has a goal, so I think her topic was well geared towards all the audience. Her visual aid, I think, could have been a little bit better. I don't really like reading when I'm trying to, pay attention to what she's saying, and I felt like I was looking down at the handout too much to stay on track with her. I think that she could have done something bigger and had better transitions from each topic to the next. But overall, she was very knowledgeable. She drew on her own experiences and past, and I think that enhanced her speech. She always has very good speech presence and moved around a little bit. So I think she did good overall.
Thank you, Jan, for that. We're going to keep the meeting moving to Mr. Dennis Maxwell, and he was evaluating Mr. Tony.
Toastmasters, and guest, if you will give me just a couple minutes, I'll speak directly to Tony for a little bit. For your second speech, overall, I give you high marks. You started off, I could tell you were prepared. You had a command of the room when you stepped up front. I thought you did a really nice job of, when you got ready to start, you paused for a moment. You said the title of your speech, and I felt like you really hooked us all in up front. You gave a great explanation of winners and losers. A lot of great quotes that I wrote down, that there's too much focus on winning in youth sports. I thought you did a really nice job with pausing and also stopping and making eye contact with people as you looked around the room. You had a couple things, namely the draft, that you had to explain exactly how it was. I thought you had a nice explanation ready to go that made it easier for us to understand if we didn't understand how that worked already. There were a couple of times then that you used humor well. When you're talking about the struggles of coaching and kids and the over-focus on winning, it was kind of a serious topic, and I thought that was nice that you put the comedy in and the humor that allowed us to stop and have a light moment in the middle of that speech. Overall, I thought you sounded like a good coach. I thought your storytelling was good. I actually had one negative that I wrote down, and that was that your structure didn't seem terribly obvious. Where normally we hear your opening was great, and we're kind of expecting, especially when it's organize your speech, to hear what you're going to tell us, the points. But I may have been flummoxed just a little bit, because when I got to the end, I realized you really had one point. And that point was that winning has too much of a focus. So with that being said, then maybe it wasn't necessary, because you did state that up front. And all of your examples were really to back up the fact that winning has too much of a focus in youth sports. So all in all, very smooth and captivating. Your conclusion was good, and I thought it was a great speech for your second speech. So great job.
Thank you, Dennis. And we're gonna move to our third evaluator. And Tony, did you evaluate?
No.
Milton?
Somebody took over from me.
Milton evaluated him.
Milton, we'll have you.
Dear Toastmasters, guests, and for the next 2 minutes, Mr. Emerson John. I love your speech. I love how you started off speaking about yourself and used it to kind of set the background for a kind of praising a country or somebody, although somebody else did. And I think you did give us a good background to start off with how you progressed to be a recipient of the scholarship and how Fidel impacted you in that way, that you go for Cuba. I know that a lot of people in Latin America, they know that people in the doctors in Cuba are one of the best, recognized for being very good doctors. And I see now why, is because you told us that they actually go out and help other people out when actual disasters happen. So that's how you make a reputation. Especially with the past that Cuba has in our minds, I myself may have thought, oh, Fidel was a selfish guy because he doesn't let people leave the country. But I see that you explained to us that he actually had good intentions, that he touched different people, and I think you did a good job portraying that. Let me see. Thank you. Well, I was surprised. Maybe I wasn't expecting it, but I liked how you said at the end, thank you, Fidel, because those were not words that I was expecting to hear today, and I think that's going to stay in our minds for quite some time to hear you speak about somebody, but we think in a different way as somebody being humble. And you're right. I don't see Fidel as being this guy holding on to his money. He actually seemed humble. And to get to that point, your speech flowed very well from start to finish. I saw that you had about a page of notes, but I didn't see that you looked down on it more than once. So that was good. The only things that I could suggest to improve
now we're gonna go ahead and call for, our time reports from Mr. Nicole.
All right, so speaker one, Doris Dixon, took 6 minutes and 30 seconds for her speech. Tony, you took a 10-minute and 5-second speech.
It's down from 15, though.
Emerson, you took 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Evaluator one, Jenna, you took 1 minute and 12 seconds. Dennis, you took 2 minutes and 21 seconds. And Milton, you took 3 minutes. For table topics, Jim, you took 1 minute and 21 seconds. I'm sorry, but I didn't catch her name.
Pia,
Pia, you took, is that 1 minute? And Greg, you took 1 minute and 44 seconds. And Jenna, you took 52 seconds. That is all.
And now we're gonna go to our meeting reports from Ms. Audrey Shepherd.
hi, we had some fun. Paul, you had one and one I have Grace at one Nick, I only had you at one so. Doris had one word of the day, one one so, and 3 ands. Tony, I had 1 5 2 so's, and 3 ands. Emerson, I had 1 1 1 so, and 3 ands. Rod, I had 1 and 1 so. Peter, we had 4 Greg, we had 3 and 2 ands. Jenna had 4 and 1 but. LaShawn, you had 2 1 and. Oh, and Jenna again for the evaluator, I had 2 and 2 Dennis, we had 1 word of the day, 2 and Milton, we had 2 and 2 And that's my count.
Great, and I'll go ahead and give you my just overall report from the meeting. I think it flowed well. We had 3 really good speakers. They all had 3 solid speeches that were really good. I enjoyed learning about, goals and goal settings and how it impacts your life and shapes it and everything, which I thought was really great. And then I love learning, just having that inside view of the winning when you're a coach, and like how you coach people, students through the game, and just that you don't get that side of the game at all. I thought was great, and also too just how to lose gracefully. I think that's very important. So great, and I loved Emerson's speech. Fidel, learning more about that. I work in news, so we covered the speech and we saw all the protests and people celebrating. And I was like, wow, this guy was really hated. So to be able to hear something from the opposite end was really good. Thank you. And I think we were running on time, so that was good. And I think overall the meeting was great. I'm going to pass it back over to our president, Mr. Paul Holden.
All right, we're coming down to the end of the meeting, so I think I'll start with the visitors' comments. Just kind of stand up and kind of give us an idea of what you thought of the meeting. So I'll start over here with Greg.
Well, it's probably been, 15 years before I've been in an educated environment. And it brought back a good feeling to be around people with such diversity. And I can't wait to just get in this class. I mean, I'm trying to put it all together, the odds and who's and everything, So, but I think it's going to create a great dynamic time in my life. So, thanks for having me.
Emma?
I like this meeting because I enjoyed the speeches. Very interesting. I think my favorite was Emerson's. I liked hearing a different view on Fidel Castro. I've never heard positives. I liked the structure of the meeting. I liked it.
Yeah, the meeting moved very well. It flowed really in a good way. I enjoyed the speeches. I thought everybody, for the most part, did their jobs exceptionally well. So, thank you.
Yeah, what were your comments for us?
I really enjoyed being here, and I loved how organized everything is, and it seems like everybody works really well together and just a positive energy. So I think, from my impressions, this is a really fun group.
All right, just a quick announcement for the guests here. Since we're not going to be meeting for the next 3 weeks, we aren't going to be taking any membership applications until after the 1st. So the 9th is when we come back. So it'll be on the 9th. Come back then. Actually, we have another meeting, don't we?
Yes, next week.
Okay. We were actually meeting next week, but then we'll be off for 3 weeks. So come back next week, visit us again, and then we'll talk about picking up after the first of the year. So.
Well, I'm not gonna be here next week. I got another class in Norman on Monday night. Next, so I wanna get started. I don't, can you make an exception?
We'll talk about that after the meeting.
Okay.
All right, so the next item on our agenda, I guess we'll start with we'll go with the BPE reviewing next meeting schedule. So, Rhonda.
All right, Toastmasters and guests. December the 12th, our last meeting of the year. Y'all need a break. Our mission will be provided by our club treasurer or his wife if he is not here. Speakers 1, 2, and 3 will be Dennis, Grace, and LaShawn. Evaluators 1, 2, and 3 will be Paul, Jim, and Wanda. Our grammarian all counter, Emerson. Our timer, Mike. Our topics master, Dennis. General evaluator, Nick. Toastmaster, Rod. And our joke, thought, and word of the day will be brought to us by Milton Granados. Put on your calendar that on January the 21st, we have the Toastmasters Leadership Institute. That is where all of our officers and members will be invited to come and learn more about the officer positions and how we provide the foundations for the club. To get some information, because when we have elections in May, if you are not an officer, you will be one. So you need to get that opportunity. It's part of our leadership program that you step up and take an officer position in the club, because doing so will help with your leadership skills. On January the 30th, we will have the Table Topics Contest for the Tulsa Club. Anyone who is a paid member of the Tulsa Club will be able to participate in the contest. And I will be getting judges from different clubs to come in and judge the Table Topics Contest. For those of you who don't understand what the topics is, everyone who's going to compete will leave the room and turn the corner over there by the Coke machines. One by one, you will come in and you will answer the exact same question. And the judges will determine who did the best answer and everything. Everybody in the club will get the judges' evaluation sheets so that they would know exactly how they're going to be judged. But everyone is asked the exact same question. The winner of the club contest will move forward to the area contest. The winner of the area contest will move forward to the division contest. And the winner of the division contest will move forward to the district contest, which will be held at the Hard Rock Casino and Hotel with our spring conference. So start thinking about it, whether you want to participate or not. It's not that hard. You only answer a question for a minute to 2 minutes. In the contest, you have to make a minimum of 1 minute in your answer or you're disqualified. Remember, in impromptu speaking in Toastmasters, in a contest, in a club, you never have to tell the truth. You just need to talk for 1 minute. Now, we're going to have a little party next week. Everybody is invited to participate. So what do you want, pizza or subs?
Subs, pizza.
All right.
Please take a visual vote and count the hands that raised.
All right, so everyone who wants pizza, raise their hand. I'll do a quick count. 1, 2.
The guests can come too. You all can get to vote.
Yeah, you can vote too. that all for pizza? Okay, who wants subs? Pizza dog. Now, I know there's more than 9 people here.
But everybody doesn't have to vote. I won't be here. The people who don't care don't have to vote.
All right, so actually it was 5 to 4 for pizza, so.
It was her.
She got 200.
All right, I will be bringing the pizza and the cups and the plates, since I have them left over from my birthday party. Cups and plates. Who would like to bring a liter of soda? Soda? Who? We got 3 of them, 4 of them. Okay, somebody needs to bring soda, somebody else needs to bring some chips. Everybody can't bring soda. But LaShawn raised her hand first. So LaShawn is gonna bring one and Mike is gonna bring the other.
Any particular kind?
Don't make it diet.
One regular, one diet. All right, who would like to bring some water for those that don't like regular soda? Jenna will bring the water. See, we took care of that. That way you don't have to bring diet soda. Coke, Sprite, or Dr. Pepper Sprite. Something dark, something light. You bring the light, you bring the dark. How's that go? Is that all right? Okay, and then chips. Anybody else bring chips or cookies? Point blank.
I'll bring cookies.
Good, cookies and chips, we got it going on. We got a party going on. Okay? Okay.
You want homemade or store-bought?
I prefer homemade, but, you know,
My
if
wife,
you
my
or your
wife
wife.
makes good cookies, so I'll bring those.
That's even better. Okay?
All right, so thank you, Rhonda, for that information and getting us going on our party next week. Any other announcements, club business, or anything we need to talk about before we close out tonight? All right, adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.